Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cup of Nurses show here with your hosts, Peter and Matt, two nurses on a mission to change this world one conversation at a time. Thank you for tuning in. If you find value in this show, please share and review the show. It would mean absolutely everything to us. cupofnurses.com for the latest updates, merch releases, and anything about us. For our lifestyle podcast, you can check out wearefrontlinewarriors.com.
In this episode, we would like to introduce you to Michelle Podlesni. Michelle is a president of the National Nurses in Business Association and CEO-president of Bloom Service Group, LLC. She is an accomplished businesswoman, U.S. Navy veteran, and nurse with over 30 years experience ranging from critical care, case management, and healthcare information technology to nationally known speaker, best-selling author, and serial nurse entrepreneur. She has a proven track record of leadership, success, and executive management of startups and established multi-million-dollar SaaS companies serving Fortune 500 clients.
Happy Nurse Week, everybody, by the way. Anybody that's tuning in, hope you find much love from your hospital providers or wherever you're working as a nurse. Maybe they're going to give you some pizza or any exciting things around those lines. Shout out to Florence Nightingale, which started the modern profession of what we call nursing. We shout out to her during the Crimean War. She created, aseptic techniques to help decrease the infection rates and deaths on the battlefield. And it started this profession. So some advice for any nurse that's out there is don't forget to always pour into your own cup. I know healthcare is stressful and hospitals and your charge nurses, everybody tries to make you pick up shifts and work hard. And I understand that it's all about teamwork, but sometimes you only can do so much on your end where you need to prioritize yourself. So yeah, think about your own well-being during this time, during Nurses Week, and fill your own cup if you can.
There's some numbers that you guys, about 60% of nurses work in hospitals. So if you're maybe thinking about switching units, there's so many units out there for you to work at. If you don't feel like this unit is a unit for you, just go out there, change units. I know it's a little bit of something that you might not hear from management, all that kind of stuff, because their responsibility is to keep you at work, keep you on the unit. But what nurses have to really hear is that there is a life and work outside your unit. And stating it again, 60% of nurses work in a hospital. If you're kind of tired of the hospital, remember, there's a lot of opportunity for you outside a hospital. I know hospital work is very demanding. It's a lot. It's very stressful. You deal with the worst of the worst. So there is a lot of opportunity out there for you outside of bedside, guys. Happy Nurses Week.
I agree with you 100%, Pete, because we are paving our own path as well. And this episode is going to be jam-packed about entrepreneurship. So like Pete said, only 60%. If you feel burnt out from your unit, from the hospital, look at different roles. We went to TravCon, remote nursing. There's working for insurance companies. Maybe you could be auditing things. Maybe it's case management where you're pulling away from bedside. Be creative with your profession. You could either invest it into getting outside of bedside itself or getting inspired and working on a passion project that you have. So yeah. And don't forget Nurses Week. There's a ton of discounts from different companies. Like you could get a free bowl at Chipotle. I remember I got it last year. So Google Nurses Week discounts and take advantage of all the freebies that Nurses Week has to offer.
Hey guys, remember, you're not just a nurse. You have a life outside the scrubs.
Hey, Michelle, welcome to the show. Can you give us a little background about yourself and what is it that you do?
Well, currently I'm the president of the National Nurses in Business Association, and it's a wonderful organization dedicated to nurse entrepreneurship. And what I get to do is coordinate conferences and events and education and provide that for nurses that are interested in transitioning from employees to entrepreneurs.
Okay, super cool. I know some of your background and you did work in the Navy for quite a bit of time. How did that transition over to what you currently do or some of your more in-hospital or nursing related stuff?
Oh, geez, it had so much to do with everything because, well, I went to the Navy right after high school, and I became a Navy corpsman. I worked for 4 years in naval hospitals doing all types of things. I mean, all different environments, surgical, med surge. I even worked in what they call patient affairs, which is more or less the administrative area, where you look at census and how things are going. So the Navy really prepared me for, I think, the confidence to go for nursing. And I was actually going into a Navy program that was for nurses. So you would serve as a corpsman for a while, and then you'd go into this nursing program that they had called NESEP. And 2 years before I got out of the Navy, they stopped that program. So instead, the GI Bill paid for my nursing education, and I became a nurse afterwards.
Amazing. And definitely confidence is important as a new grad, even through nursing school. You really needed to be confident in yourself to make the decisions, especially dealing with people's lives. When you worked as a nurse, did you have a favorite part in healthcare that you really enjoyed working, or a specialty?
Well, because of my Navy experience and having had a lot of nursing care experience, I went straight from graduating to the ICU. So that's where I worked for a number of years. And I just loved it. It's very much the same and very different today. There's so much more technology involved than there was before, but the concentration and focus remains the same. So that was primarily the area that I worked in. The last experience I had in a hospital setting, not with nursing, but in a hospital setting, was as a charge nurse in a med-surg unit.
Okay, super cool. I know before the show we talked a little about traveling, and we do always recommend travel nursing to all our listeners if they are a nurse, if they're looking for something maybe a little bit different, or if they feel maybe a little bit stuck in where they are, because I know sometimes being on unit, you don't really always have the opportunity for like career progression because they need like boots on the ground for the most part. They need you in unit. Not promotions aren't always the best, and if it is, then there's not a lot of them out there. So when it comes to traveling, you've been all around the U.S. Like I mentioned before the show, we did talk about some of your favorite places, but given like the top 5 favorite locations, what would you recommend? Just some place that you could kind of more enjoy the outside of the work environment.
Well, since I've worked in several of those, I also had offices all over the country. So I would say that one of great area to enjoy more of that work-life balance is in Florida. And that would be, I lived and had offices in the Tampa area. Orlando's great. It's a little bit more that you're traveling to get to the beaches. So I just love that whole corridor. And I was stationed for 3 years at Pensacola, Florida. So I love that panhandle as well. And it's just really great because it really allows you to enjoy the weather as well as, you work hard, you play hard. So the California, same thing. And I've had offices up and down California, and definitely my favorite is Southern California. And we have a lot of nurse members out in California. So it's a great area for, a different quality of life. And then and now I'll tell you the people that had the most genuine relationship, and relationship is very important for health and wellness, right? And balance was when I worked in the Midwest in Chicago. Just wonderful, wonderful nurses, colleagues. We did a lot of things outside of our work in the hospital together. We really enjoyed each other. And I found the Midwest to be very warm and a great environment too for nursing.
Michelle, to getting to the point where you are today, a lot of times as nurses, we have an idea of eventually we want to maybe leave bedside or try something different. And a lot of the advice that we get from people is if you want to leave something, you got to leave it right away, and you have to 100% double down and commit to something else that you want to do. But a lot of actual in-life perspective that I get from nurses and healthcare professionals that want to do something else out of bedside, they still stay in bedside and kind of work on their plan on kind of getting out while they're still kind of working in it. So when you were slowly leaving bedside, was it just a you left approach, or was it slowly maybe moving the ranks or trying out new things, versus like the most recommendation is you have to completely leave something to then kind of join something else?
Well, I'd have to answer that in a series of steps because I've left and started something multiple times. So for example, right now, while I'm the president of the NNBA, I still do unconventional nurse working from my book and from my workshops. I still do coaching regarding that. And I still am a case manager, a catastrophic case manager for about 10 hours a week. And I do that very purposefully. I've done that since 1985. I do it very purposely because I want to know what's going on in the hospital. I want to stay current with care and standards of care. And this way, it allows me to stay in touch with it. So my case management, which was my first step out of hospital nursing, has served me for over 30 years. So when I first left hospital nursing, basically I left for the same reasons a lot of nurses leave. They just don't feel like they're in step with other people in their lives because we work weekends, we work holidays, we work extended hours. A lot of nurses today are so tired from the shifts, the 12-hour shifts that they're putting in, that on the days they have off, they're not getting refreshed or restored enough. So that's where I found myself when I left hospital nursing. It was like I was really tired of working weekends. I was really tired of working holidays. So I looked for something, and there was an insurance company that was looking for a healthcare resource specialist. And I thought, wow, I have a great background with all the hospitals I worked in the Navy and since as a nurse. So I went in, got the job, loved it, worked with claimants on what would be some of the best courses for their future. Definitely along the lines of case management. But the big thing was it introduced me to computers. And I fell in love with computers. And that's kind of where my business life went. After I had a full business life, and that's, I ran a couple different software companies. I had nurses in offices all over the country. I got very good at what I did and just progressed and advanced. After I left that, when I went to start unconventional nurse, I was working in multiple areas. So it was more like I tell people in my book, or I tell nurses in my book, you can be right now working how you're working as clinical or in whatever setting that you're in. You can straddle by putting one foot out and put out a little bit and try it and see what it's like. And when you feel that you're making enough money and you're happy with that situation, then you can take the other foot and go both feet in. That's the wonderful thing about nursing. We have lots of nurses that still do some clinical work or home care, different things with a traditional healthcare system, but they're into entrepreneurship as well. And I would say most of their goals is to go full-time in entrepreneurship. And they'll get there. But when I did the first step, getting back to your original question, I went full-time. It was like when I was burned out, I want to leave, I'm done. And so that first time going into what I would say a career alternative, which was in a business setting, but still using my nursing in case management.
Sounds like an amazing journey. Went through so much from the military to opening multiple businesses. And one thing that stood out to me is you said that you opened and started multiple businesses because sometimes the first thing doesn't stick. You always have to keep on trying and re-innovating things. And question to you, for any nurse that's listening now, What are the characteristics or the grit that you need, or the mentality, the mindset that you need to persevere in these kind of endeavors? Because entrepreneurship is not for everybody. A lot of people love
Right.
the security blanket of having a paycheck every single week. So what does it really take to become a nurse entrepreneur?
I think simply the first thing it takes is making the decision.
Mm.
It's a decision. Once you make that decision, the universe and everything conspires to meet you. So, for example, you might not know how to do something that you want to do, but if you decide you're going to do it, all of a sudden you start finding the resources to do it. So, for example, when nurses are looking to, what's out there for me? What different opportunities are out there? They start Googling things, they start researching things. They're going to come across a variety of resources. They're definitely going to come across the NNBA, and they'll see what's available, out there for them. So, as far as the number one thing is the decision,
Mm.
you definitely need the mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset. And what I mean by that is you need to start looking, especially nurses. It's the best. It's just really the best background and education and experience to have to become a business owner. I say constantly, nurses make great business owners, and they really do, because nurses at their heart are problem solvers. That's what they do every day when they go in to a healthcare situation and working with patients. That's what entrepreneurs do. They find and solve problems. So having that entrepreneur mindset and starting to look at, well, this is a recurring problem that's going on out there. How can I address it? And there's so many nurses that have done that in so many different ways. I mean, look at the different software apps that are out there for scheduling. Many are nurse business owners on those scheduling apps. Look at some of the unique products that are out there. There's a nurse that created this type of stepping stool that's very safe to get out of the bed. There's nurses that developed seizure wrapped blankets for patients. There was a nurse that developed the Billy bonnet for babies that were jaundiced, and they had to have oxygen fed and such. So there's nurses developed the bed bath. It was it was called a bed bath bag. So nurses are tremendous at seeing the challenges that are out there and meeting them and addressing them.
Mm. And how could the NNBA support all this? I know you did a lot of work for the NNBA. If someone joins the NNBA, what kind of maybe help or information or benefit can they get from going through the or association?
There's such a variety of things. First and foremost is what's called the Nurses Business Training Center, and there's 3 modules. There's over 30 lessons on each thing. So the first module, has all the different business plans and developmental tools. We have ones in the toolkit that you can fill out, because there's not just one way to do business planning. There's multiple ways. So that's a big thing, understanding those different ways and what would apply to you, your idea, and how you want to move forward. The other thing is all the specifics of business, all the administration. How do I invoice? How do I price? How do I keep my records? What entity do I need to be? So that's all out there as well. And then how to market and promote your business and keep it successful. So those are in the Nurses Business Training Center and the modules of education. And it also gives the top 25 different areas that nurses create businesses in, the best nurse-owned businesses, and there's variations of that. We also provide, toolkits like a startup cost calculator, so people can feed in amounts of what, and everything's listed, so they're not guessing. They fill in, the different areas that are listed when you typically start a business, and so what kind of investment you're going to be making. And then we have a lot of marketing and networking opportunities. So, for example, our members get to do a member blog post, and in that, there's 2 outgoing links for people to get in touch with them. So I have a lot of members that write their expertise, whatever their expertise is, and it's in our blog area. We have our Nurse Entrepreneurs Exchange interviews. We have a newsletter that now has several hundred editions. We started that in 2014, and it comes out twice a month. And there's all kinds of opportunities. And then we have our annual conference. So our annual conference is a big deal because there is nothing like being with your colleagues that are all like-minded, business-minded, and they're exploring that opportunity. So there's just a tremendous, there's more than that. There are nurses that put on events all the time, and we have an event calendar, and they can post it on our calendar, which is on nearly every page of our website. So there's just a lot of different opportunities depending on the stage that nurses are in, because we have both the aspiring and new entrepreneur, and we have nurses that have been members for over 20 years and that have been in business for that long.
Yeah, those are all really good resources, because when it comes to opening a business, you think you have it figured out, and then you start putting in work in one aspect of it, and you realize that after you finish this, there's 3 more things that have to be done. And once you do those 3 more things, there's like 9 more things. And it almost seems like every time you do something, there's like 3 more things that are added on to whatever you thought you finished. And it's just kind of like it's like a slow snowball to success. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. Because if you think, usually we compare it to like school. It took you 4 years to get a nursing degree, to get your bachelor's, go through school to know something. So you're not gonna be able to build something in a few months. And if it only took you a few months, it's probably not gonna be that good of quality. Because look how much work you had to put in just to become a nurse. Now you want to basically make something that's going to give you that same paycheck or even greater. So you gotta put in a lot of extra time. So I'm curious, Michelle, to when you were just figuring out your life, trying to figure out what you really want to do, finding your niche and trying to gain success, what did you really struggle with? What was like one of the stuff that almost like lingered that you wish you could have had this instinct or born with this gift to just be able to do it?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't born with anything along those lines when it came to business. That's, I came from a very, very traditional background, a father that was a steel worker, a stay-at-home mom. It was, so there were no entrepreneurs in the family, because we have nurses that have had family members that are entrepreneurs, and they pick it up, they understand it, they've lived it. Just like my daughter understands entrepreneurship. She's lived it. She's lived around it. What did I struggle with? I definitely struggled with honing in on all my ideas. One of the problems that I have, and I know others have it as well, I have so many ideas and I want to do so many things that I don't focus in and get enough traction on what I need to be doing. So scattering energy was something I really had to learn.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because I watched a video and it basically said that your ideas aren't really valid anything unless you make something out of them, because anybody could,
that's right,
in that sense, come up with an idea in the shower, but what's actually going to bring it into fruition and into life is actually putting in the work and actually trying to make the idea happen, not just saying, hey, this is a good idea, we should do this and this. There actually has to be something physically done to make that happen.
It's very true. Action is extremely important. And taking action and not being afraid. Sometimes when a lot of nurses get inspired, all of a sudden that self-doubt comes in and they back away from it. And then they tell me, Michelle, it took me so long. I'm finally doing what I wanted to do. And I think that that's true. I think that we have to definitely act when we do get inspired, and just be able to harness that focus. I don't know, I had heard something not too long ago, or read something not too long ago. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are good friends, and they were talking, and a journalist came up to them and said, I have you both here, so I'm going to ask you the question. What's the most important quality of someone to be successful? And they both said focus. Focus and for me, focus, that's not just focus. That means focus your energies, your efforts. You got to put in that action
it's like
to get it to work.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say you have to put in that action, to get it to work. And here's a good thing. Not everything's going to be successful. Not everything is going to turn out how you first envisioned that it was going to turn out. But it's wonderful because it turns out how it should. And you learn from that and then apply it as you go down. You said like a snowball. It sort of is like a snowball. It's or spaghetti. It's not a straight line. If people have any concept about entrepreneurship, that you do this, you do this, you do this, and it's like off to success, I wouldn't say it's for them, because it reveals so much about you that you don't know personally until you're in the trenches doing it. And what's beautiful is that ability, because I relate it to the nursing process, implement, evaluate, and during that evaluation, then revise, refine, and get it right. And you just keep going.
I love that. One thing you mentioned is like being the jack of all trades but the master of none. So your attention goes where energy flows, in a sense. And yeah, sometimes we get all fixated on like 10 different ideas and try to pour 10% into everything, and things don't work out because we don't double down on that one thing. And I feel like also on entrepreneur journey, just to add on what you guys are mentioning, is just perseverance, that snowball effect, that spaghetti. Sometimes maybe this is more from a spiritual sense. It's like the gift that you're getting of an entrepreneur or living your purpose. It's not like a perfect string of spaghetti they could just pull out. It's like a whole ball, and your mission in life is to pull apart that spaghetti and to make that string perfectly linear if you can. And how does that look like? It's not linear. It's just up and down slopes, and you need some perseverance. And you guys mentioned self-doubt throughout the episode. Is like we need to really believe in ourselves and carry that over with all of our might, in a sense.
It's true. And the work that you both are doing in health, wellness, balance, for nurses is very valuable, because we all need balance. We all need to have perspective. You can't just go all out all the time. It's like you said, it flows. This is life, there's seasons to everything.
I love that. And did you ever have a moment when you had a bad season in life, maybe in your entrepreneur journey? And what is advice that you told yourself, or if anybody listening that's going through a hardship and is in that pitfall, what is that advice you would tell your younger self to help overcome that?
I was very fortunate because I always was grounded in my why, because my why has always been to serve. That's always been my orientation. That's why I joined the Navy. That's why I became a nurse. That's why I do what I do today. It's to be able to serve and serve well. And the thing that I would tell my younger self, because I've gone through some very devastating times. So let me just give an example of what gets you through. My husband and I, after I left the corporate world, as an executive, we knew we were going to do something, but we wanted to do something entrepreneurial because I was going to have our daughter and I didn't want to be traveling. I wanted to adapt a lifestyle. So we started a senior care company, and we had that senior care company for several years, and it was wonderful. A year before we sold the senior care company, my mother and my mother-in-law both were diagnosed with forms of dementia. And it was a very difficult year that followed. So here am I. So this is the difficult part. Here am I. I have 70 caregivers in this wonderful community resource for people. And I have two people I love dearly that were very ill and needed care. And so I backed away off of that. We had different people in place so I could. And I just did minimal on that business. So if I would think of myself as a business owner at the time, it wouldn't be that I was that great because I wasn't out there doing my thing, but I was taking care of family members at the time. And that the next year we ended up selling that company. And that was definitely a time in my life where I felt like I don't want to do this anymore. It was very difficult because of what the toll it was taking personally. So you go through it. You go through things to the best of your ability. Relationship with people is still the number one, regardless of whatever work you do. And things pass, this too shall pass, and it passes and things change. And it was after that experience was over, that's when I said it's time to write this book. And that's when I wrote my book, Unconventional Nurse, Going from Burnout to Bliss. And so, things come in different waves, different seasons. It's not going to be all rainbows and lollipops and unicorns. There's going to be tough times, tough days that are just ordinary, and that you need your faith, whatever is your why, to keep going. What you were saying about perseverance, having grit, having courage to face different days. And things change, and things change for reasons. And it all works. All this experience. That's why nurses are so great at becoming entrepreneurs and business owners. Every bit of experience that nurses have contributes well to whatever business they feel motivated with and moving forward with. There's so many options out there. So I would just say that I said I was glad my younger self was grounded. I always knew my why, but I also knew that there are tough times to experience. You just have to do your best through them, and it definitely feeds to the next stage of evolution of yourself as a person and as a entrepreneur or business owner.
I love that. I want to add on to that evolution, because those seasons, those humps that we experience, those are just obstacles that are meant for our growth, for that evolution of who we're becoming and tapping into that purpose. But that's only if you see those obstacles as growth. If you see those as roadblocks and you have a very negative perspective on those things, then you're going to fall down with your mindset, which is you're being in a negative mindset in a sense, versus looking at those obstacles. They're not working against me, they're working for me. They're meant to serve a purpose, a lesson, and with that evolution is going to come out to something better, right?
I love that, how you said it's for me, not to me, it's for me. And that's a great way of experiencing what we go through, and have it then evolve to the next version of ourselves or our business.
And Michelle, you brought up the why quite a bit. You said you've always knew your why, but my thing is, can you give some advice to people that are trying to maybe find their why? Did you maybe realize that, hey, you do something really good because you said your why is to serve? So did you realize that, hey, when it comes to the word serve, you've maybe looked at your life and you saw that, hey, I just do this part really good and I enjoy doing this. So why don't I keep doing this? How can somebody maybe help figure out their why?
Absolutely. You know, I think a lot of nurses at some point have to re-identify or reawaken their passion. I mean, I think for the most part, most nurses go into this field because they have a tremendous heart to care, to look for better outcomes, for to apply their skills and everything that they have towards making the human condition better for people. So I'd have to say that there's a section that I had in my book, and it was basically asking yourself, first of all, think about what were you good at when you were younger? You know, if people are having, if they need to reawaken that passion, or if they need to re-identify, what were you good at when you were younger? What did your friends and family tell you that you were good at? What did you like to learn? What is something you were always drawn to learn? So there's a series of questions to ask yourself, trying to learn to become more self-aware. The other thing is, I always like the question. Oh, I also asked people to identify three role models in life that they were very drawn to and looked up to, respected. And then the last thing I would ask people is, if there were no limits, if there wasn't anything standing in your way, money, resources, time, energy, what would you be? What would you be doing? And, you know, the cool thing about that is it helps reorient somebody to who they are, what their values are, and allows them to think, oh, okay, you know, this is what I can concentrate on. And there's so many other valuable things. My favorite, you know, there's all kinds of analysis and assessments out there, but my favorite actually is Strength Finders, because Strength Finders operates on the premise that we all have gifts. We all don't have everything. We have some things that we're very strong with. And I remember when I first took that Strength Finders quiz, it was a half-hour quiz and it was on the computer. And the number one component that it had for me was empathy. And it made me happy when I saw that it did that, because I think nurses obviously have a great deal of empathy out there. But it identifies 5 of your strengths. And then when you don't have things that you're strong at, then you work with other people in your life to support those weak areas so that you have the whole component.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like your why, it's very important to make it about other people and giving value to other people, because if you make your why just about yourself, I feel like you're going to hit a roadblock, because in life, as you know, like Maslow's hierarchy, as soon as you reach self-actualization, that's it for yourself. Like, you reach your limit technically within yourself, and now the highest good for you to reach more happiness per se, or continue filling your own cup and giving to others, is creating value, giving to others. And I feel like that's what we as nurses got into the trade first. I know healthcare freaking sucked our compassion away sometimes, and we have compassion fatigue.
That's right.
We got burnt out, but ultimately we all
compassion fatigue.
Yeah, but we went there for the right reasons, to serve others, and that's our why. And I think, you know, this is my little epiphany now, is the nurses make awesome entrepreneurs because we have that why to begin with, where we want to give to other people. It's not per se about the money or trying to reach some kind of capita, or maybe fueling the ego in a say. It's always altruistic in a sense to give to others. And Michelle, how is your evolution? What are some goals that you're working on in your future? What are you excited about for your maybe next season of life or the next chapter of what's to come for you?
Well, I think the thing that I enjoy most out of my career, and when I look at my past, because I've been published in multiple journals and I wrote my book, and that I would like to write more.
Mm.
You know, when I look to the future, I would like to write more. I love doing the interviews that I've been doing with nurse entrepreneurs because it is inspiring for me just listening to nurses' journeys and where they're at and how they got there, and just interesting conversations. I love that. So I'll be doing more of that. Again, this all contributes, to a book that's going to be, basically how nurses become entrepreneurs and how nurses succeed in business. It would be the fourth edition of that book. The NNBA has written a book like that along those lines since 1993, I think was the first one. So this one's due. So I need to get that put together. But so those are things that I'm working on from a professional standpoint.
And Michelle, why do you have such a big attraction toward writing? What does it give you? Does it give you just some alone time with your thoughts where you're free to think and write what you want? What is that affinity for it?
That's a very good question. I've been writing since I was 14. So I journal quite a bit. I can't tell you. I don't know. It's just sometimes, in writing, I just feel inspired and I love stories. In fact, that was the main thing about my nursing, actually. I told you I worked in ICU. So, of course, we're working with very ill patients, and whenever patients would take a really bad turn, a lot of my colleagues would say, Michelle, could you come over, to be with this patient a while or talk to this patient? Because I always was able to speak to patients and hear their stories. I mean, I was always asking questions. It was always about the story. And so I've written, it's more, I just write a lot about stories of people, stories of patients, of course, not any names of patients, a situation that occurred. But that's always appealed to me. And so I love the story.
Yeah, it's almost like since you've been doing it as like a child, it's almost like that time where you're able to almost like bond with your inner child, because all of us have like their inner child that we have to like let go or figure out or bond with, or just let loose a little bit, and that might be, that might be your thing. Some people do it with like sports, some people do it in watching movies, spending time with maybe family or friends, or doing certain things that they enjoy as a kid. So that's like almost like you reliving that emotion or that love or that just enjoyment. Like you're basically just reliving that. It's super nice.
Well, it is, and I do love it, and that's where I would like to spend more time. And I talked about professionally, personally as well. I have a lot of different projects that I work on. I'm a big recipe photojournalist, I would say. So I'm very much into that. So I enjoy it. I enjoy writing for sure.
Yeah, and that's really good because you also mentioned stories, and if you think about it, the first way humans were able to communicate with each other was literally through stories. So that's like that's probably why you're so good with people, is because you have this fundamental thing that you enjoy stories, you enjoy writing stories, you enjoy talking about stories, and that's like the most basic principle of where communication got established is with stories back when millions of years ago, or however old humans are. Is just storytelling such a big part that communities came together to talk to each other with stories. That's how kind of different civilizations came together. Same idea with stories, because maybe they didn't have the same exact language, but maybe they could put together an idea or a story that they could just share. And that's same with religion in a sense. Like when people come together over religion, over like these same stories, it's a wonderful thing.
It is. And when you were saying that, it's probably one of the top reasons nurses come to our conference every year. And that's because they get to see nurses from all kinds of backgrounds and specialties and experiences up on stage presenting their story and how they achieved what they have in business and how they've done. And it's all different. So the nurses in the audience are going, okay, you know, if she can do it, I can do it. You know, if he can do it, I can do it. And it's just amazing how the story affects people. I definitely, yeah, we love stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what that comes down to is the power of belief, right? If sharing those stories with other entrepreneurs in the space and the the events that you guys created creates that ripple effect of a belief, and a belief is so powerful. Even if you look at religion, it all comes down to belief in a higher power, where if you feel stressed out or grief, you give that away, that feeling away, that emotion to a higher power because of that belief. So yeah, I think that's a powerful thing where we could all come together, share our stories, and it creates a powerful seed in our life for us to take on whatever it is that we want to endeavor on in life.
Yeah.
And that ripple effect is really true. I mean, when I look at the situation from 1985, thousands upon thousands of nurses have launched successful businesses and have been part of NNBA and NNBA's history. It's just incredible to see. It's incredible to read the comments after every conference of how it changed their life or changed their business, you know. So, and so all these nurses are touching all these lives. I guess, you know, what you're saying about the ripple, it's a visual for me, you know, of raindrops on a lake and all those rings, and they all interconnect, and it's wonderful. And I don't think nurses appreciate how much they affect this world for good. And it's a wonderful thing. That's a great visual.
Yeah. And just to keep the theme of stories going here, it's almost like business is a new story of it itself. Because, for example, healthcare staffing agency, there's hundreds of healthcare staffing agencies, but each of them have their own story of they're all built differently. They're all built with different ideas. Yeah, they might do the same thing as staff nurses in a hospital, but each of them do it in their own different way, in their own different sense. That's what kind of makes them super unique as well. And since you like writing so much, do you also enjoy reading just as much?
Oh, my whole family teases me. If something has print on it, I'll be reading it. I do read quite a bit, quite a bit. And I had one of these days I'm going to write about the business books and books in general that have affected my life in big ways. I'll tell you, when I was in the Navy, there was a book I read that was the first book I read on self-improvement and development. And it was the Positive Thinking book by Norman Vincent Peale. So that really started changing my life in that direction on how I could work on my life and develop it and progress. Because as I said, I didn't have, I was in the Navy at the time. I didn't have the education that told me that you could develop goals and achieve and, positive mental attitudes. But these were all things that books definitely, along with education, gave me. So I'm a big reader.
It's funny, Michelle. That's the book that I have on my nightstand right now.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful! It's a great book.
It is, and I've read it in college, and I'm rereading it now, like almost a decade later. But it's very impactful because I didn't know the power of the book before. I didn't have the mental capability of understanding things so much. Now reading it again as a more developed, you could say, entrepreneur, I understand it so much more and how powerful those principles are of power of positive thinking, like he describes in the book.
It's really true. And I know there was an exercise that he had in that book that I really benefited from. I used to scowl when I was young. I mean, I'm in my 20s and early 20s, and I would scowl and I would just put my finger here trying to relax that scowl because I wasn't thinking negative things, but I didn't look very welcoming or positive because I had this scowl. And so that book really helped me along the lines of not only, what I was in control of, but I was control physically of how I came off with posture and smiling and a pleasant disposition. So it's that was the first one.
Interesting. Yeah, it's amazing. It's like almost like also like a trauma response, right? Where people go unconscious and they have the trauma response. Their shoulders tend to round forward. They go into this like almost fetal position because
Yes,
because
bring
their
it in,
energy is being
contract.
sucked in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And one last question we like to ask all of our guests. So if you had the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to have a cup of coffee with anybody one last time, who would it be and why?
I definitely it would be two people. I'm sorry. It wouldn't be just one person because my dad knew how to make the coffee, my mother didn't. So I would say sitting with my mom and dad and having a cup of coffee today would be wonderful beyond words.
Can I ask why that is? Or would you ask them even maybe?
I had a very full life with my parents. I mean, I was in my 40s when I lost them, but it's just they had very wonderful lives. They came up, they were young 12, 13-year-olds during the Great Depression. They were at, graduating high school and right afterwards for World War II. They saw men land on the moon. My dad, experienced video games, and it was like he would say to me, why did this come out now? Why didn't this come out before? Because he would enjoy those video games much, on the TV and doing things. And I just they were the very best of who they were and when they were. And I still have a lot of questions. Of course I miss them, but I would sit down and I would say, okay, here's what I didn't ask and I want to know.
Yeah. Michelle, where can people find you if they want to maybe ask for some advice or ask you any kind of questions?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn, Michelle Podlesni. They can find me on Facebook as well, but they can find about the NNBA at NNBA Nurse Entrepreneurs or NNBA Nurses in Business, and then the website nursesbusiness.com. There's a variety of ways out there.
Michelle, thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate your time, all the expertise, the knowledge that you have, and thank you for creating the container that you did it with the NNBA and the events to have like-minded entrepreneurs get on, the events and talk and speak and create that ripple effect where potentially nurses could become a dominant workforce to create great change in America and potentially
absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll see you again.
All righty.
Bye, Michelle.
I can't take no loss.